You're watching a reality check special broadcast. The focus may be on the battle in Parliament, but it's really states where other battles are being fought, especially when it has to do with state finances at a time when there are great stresses because of the pandemic. I'm joined by the Tamil Nadu Finance Minister, Mr. P.T. Rajan. Thank you very much indeed, sir, for joining us here in your office in Chennai. And we are speaking at a time when you're all set to present the first budget of your new government, the DMK government headed by M.K. Stalin, and you've already in a sense come out guns blazing. You've taken out a white paper where you say the state is heavily in debt, almost I think 6 lakh crores in debt. But I suppose the question then is, sir, are you already in a sense setting yourself up to concede that you may not have the money to fulfill a lot of the promises you made in the elections, many of which involved considerable amount of cash out?
Yeah, I think there are probably 2 or 3 ways of thinking about this, right? I think fulfilling or not fulfilling is the mark of political integrity of a movement, of a party, of a leader.
Sure.
And that from the times of our former decades-long leader, Thalaivar Kalaignar, the saying was, Solvadai Seivom, Seivadai Solvom. We do what we say and we say what we do.
Right.
So from that perspective, I may or may not have agreed with all the poll promises, but the poll promises are binding on all of us.
Sure.
And so we are committed to that. I've made that point even in the white paper at the conclusion. I said this is not an excuse to say that we will renege in the conclusion of my white paper.
So you kind of
in the white
already
paper, the text is
conceded
there.
That you will stick to the promise.
Yeah, the only difference I think is I don't think it's realistic to fulfill all the poll promises within 30 days or 60 days or 100 days of coming to office. I think it would be irresponsible because whatever the total cost of those promises are, when you already have a kind of sunken economy and a crisis-ridden kind of situation, and we are already knocking against the borrowing limits. I mean, I think it's beyond irresponsible to even try to do those because the list was long and the costs are very high. But I have actually a second problem, at least ethically.
Okay, I'll come to the second problem in a second. Yeah. But doesn't just the first problem itself become politically problematic? Because that's what you promised the people. So now, you say
I've already earned a little bit of negative feedback on this, and I've said I don't recall anywhere in the portfolio. And you must understand that the list of poll promises was not 1 or 2; it was hundreds.
Yes, many.
Yeah. And I don't think anywhere did we say or should reasonable people expect that you can do hundreds of poll promises in 2 days or 3 days.
Right.
By contrast, I talk about the alleged 15 lakhs per account, not done after the second election.
Right.
By
You're
some
talking
other
of the BJP's promise of 15 lakhs.
So I'm saying, I think people are realistic because certainly that party got re-elected with a greater majority the second time than the first time. So, we are in politics. We interact with the people every day. We make our assessments of what is realistic and what is not.
Sure, but give me an idea, because not everyone would remember, which were the really big ticket poll promises that are likely to place the maximum strain in your finances? There's already the 4,000 rupee one-time payment.
That was already done, and that was a 8,000 something crore promise.
Right. Everybody got a one-time.
Then we did something
crores.
that we
that
did
cost
not.
8,000 crores.
8,000 and change. And then we did something we had not promised, which is another about 800 crores worth of 14 grocery products for every ration card because of the lockdown and the corona. So, if anything, we have exceeded the poll promises based on the circumstances.
Then there is also, which are the other big ones? There's something about the 1,000 rupees to the women head of households, which one estimate put it to almost 24,000 crores.
Again, I don't think we estimated based on the numbers. What we said was that all the head of household women would get it. But I think, again, our political opponents will not like to make this distinction, but I make a clear distinction. There was such a thing as a poll manifesto document.
Sure. And it's the ones listed in...
Yeah. But this was not in that.
Right.
Just to make that clear.
Okay.
There was a separate kind of conference or manada in Trichy.
Right.
At which the Chief Minister, now Chief Minister, then Leader of the Opposition, Leader of the DMK, M.K. Stalin, said this is my 10-year vision.
Sure.
And in that 10-year vision, he gave a lot of data points about the size of the Tamil Nadu economy, the total extent of investment to be attracted, the number of jobs to be created, etc. There was a 10-point 10-year vision.
Sure.
And one of those 10-year vision items was this 1,000 rupee.
Okay. So have you done a rough back of the envelope or perhaps more detailed calculation of what the total poll promises estimate could come to?
Yeah,
ballpark.
Not many of them were related to money. Some of them were related to execution, some of them were related to legislation. I have certainly not done all of it together, but perhaps my second answer is the right answer to this question, which is that I am reluctant to actually do a lot of things because of the complete lack of data and not just the lack of good data, but the clear evidence of malfeasance that we have discovered after coming into the office. So, for example, it's no secret that many of the people we gave the 4,000 rupees on the ration card to were undeserving of it. Right? They were not poor families, they were not below poverty line, there were government employees in that list, there were income tax assessees on that list. Certainly it is neither in the interests of macroeconomics, nor of social justice, nor of democracy that you should take that kind of money and give it to people who don't really need it. Because they are already in the right place. So, this distinction cannot be made because our data systems are so bad and our, malfeasance is so high. Some of it is not malfeasance, some of it is bad data. I'm trying to make the separation.
Of course.
Some of it is just bad data. We don't know who is what. We don't know who's at what level.
Interesting. So
and some of it is clear malfeasance. For example, when we have gone and investigated the crop loan waiver that was done by the previous government, it is horrendous. There is so much malfeasance there. That it's staggering. Right? I mean, people have allegedly taken a crop loan and gotten it waived, except the area where they should have been doing the planting, if that document is right, is actually in the premises of a government arts college.
Okay, so obviously fake beneficiaries skimming
in my personal philosophy, which I've reiterated again and again to the Chief Minister, and which I said in the white paper press conference, is that it is almost as bad an outcome for you to put money out of the government into undeserving or malfeasance hands, as it is to not put it in the right hands, because it is equally against your intent. We are in a zero-sum game. None of us has excess revenues. We are all deficit finance governments. So if I don't put it in the right hands, it means I don't have enough money. If I put it in the wrong hands, it means I could have used that money to pay this person.
Okay, so you actually set yourself a fairly challenging parameter. You're saying that first you want to actually plug the corruption, the other leakages in the pipeline.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's 100% doable.
But as largely, before you start putting water in the pipes, you first need to start doing some patching.
I think you should assume that there's many things. There's broken systems, there's lack of clarity, there's corruption, and there's malfeasance on the part of the beneficiary, which obviously includes some corruption as part of it.
So Mr. Rajan, let me ask you this. In practical terms, this makes complete sense, but as you know, politics doesn't always impinge on practicality. Have you faced any pushback to what you're saying within your own cabinet colleagues?
Of course, there's always internal debates about the speed and the relative value of things. But I think, I want to make a distinction. And I made this in a Tamil interview a couple of days ago. Our party stands for a certain set of values. One of those values is self-respect. Right? That's what we espouse as the Dravidian movement. Self-respect says that I can have a difference of opinion with any other minister, or even with my Chief Minister. He is the Chief Minister, so he makes the final call. But that does not mean that I am not allowed to think on my own, that I cannot have an independent view, that I cannot have a more technical perspective. So the way this works is that we are all giving inputs to the Chief Minister, and he makes the final call. Once he makes whatever call he makes, then we are all bound by that call. Just like I say, it's not clear to me that I would have chosen these poll promises. And I was very clear. Let me put it personal philosophy. When I stood for election the first time as an MLA, I refused to make any promise. I said, I don't know the system well enough if I can deliver or not. So I made zero poll promises when I got elected in 2016.
That is completely the opposite of the political
When I got
culture of
elected in
Tamil Nadu.
2021, I only made 3 poll promises. Only 3. I said, I will make sure that the underground drainage system that has been in progress for 11 years and not completed gets completed. I will make sure that the third collective drinking water scheme, which is supposed to have started 5 years ago and not been done,
Right.
gets done, and 130 liters per day are delivered for every resident. And I will make sure that the Kumbhabhishekam and Tirupani of Madurai Meenakshi Temple, which has not started on time, it should have been done every 12 years,
Right.
gets done. And I'll ask the Chief Minister to name me as the chairman for the committee, and I will make sure it gets done under my watch.
Okay.
That's the only 3 promises I made on the second one.
Right.
I did not promise 1 rupee, 1 project,
Yes.
1 anything.
Mixer, grinder, TV.
Nothing.
That.
But that
But your
doesn't-
party does
no,
that,
No, but
so-
no, but that doesn't mean, I don't think my
Yeah.
party did mix a grinder, but my party made other commitments.
Yeah.
So that is the way that a good system is supposed to work, that you have people of differing views or opinions who all talk it out, debate it, have...
And then you come to a
and then
conclusion.
whatever the Chief Minister says after
Sure.
listening to all of us, that is the path for all of us to follow. So I am as committed to delivering his commitments as he is.
Okay, fair enough. Let's pull back a little bit from the stage to look at the wider picture of the center, because you and many other chief ministers have made the point that adding to your financial stress is not just this carryover of debt, but the fact that you're not getting compensated by the GST dues. The figure that we found on the government's own website is it's about 1.4 lakh crores
Something like that
of
is
dues,
what they
which
presented.
you are about 10,000 crores. You're still owed, which is not a huge amount, but I guess in stress times, every amount counts.
Every rupee counts.
But overall, you actually have been very harsh with the GST Council. You said it's a toothless body.
And I'm not sure that harsh is the right word.
Well,
I think
you-
speaking truth is not necessarily harsh. Right?
Okay.
I mean, I didn't like castigate anybody. I just laid out the truth as I see it. So
But you don't think that, I mean, of course, there may be systemic flaws, but you don't think that it has still the potential to actually work as some kind of regulator, referee in terms of how federal funds are.
I mean, listen,
devolved? No.
I'm the latest entrant, right? Many of the people have been there before. Even my fellow finance minister from Kerala, Thiru Balakrishnan, though he is also a first-time finance minister, he's been in the Rajya Sabha and was on the select committee that examined the bill and all that. So, you know, clearly I'm not the most erudite or most kind of deep opinion on this topic. I'm just looking at it as a systems analyst or as an ex-banker or as an ex-consultant, and I find such profound structural flaws and lack of clarity, which raises the question, if 4 years after the council and the law and the system, we still debate an hour and a half at the beginning of a meeting that happens after an 8-month break when the law calls for every 3-month meeting.
Yeah.
The first hour and a half of the 43rd council meeting was which items on the agenda are for approval, which are for ratification, or which are only for information. If that is not yet clear to the bulk of the members enough that there is a discussion, then surely this is not an ideal system. I'll just leave it at that.
Okay. How? Well, there were some fireworks as well, I think, with your Goa counterpart, which you.
Again, not provoked by me. I didn't open my mouth for 36 hours or so after the meeting.
Right.
After press conferences were held and national media carried the news, then I responded. But from the meeting finished at 7 or 8 p.m. on Friday,
Right.
till Sunday morning, I didn't have anything to say about it. I didn't, and I addressed a press conference on Saturday evening without addressing that matter.
Okay, now we have a situation where the government is actually, center seems to be suggesting that the economy is starting to turn around, and various figures are being cited. GST collections are up about 14%. This is compared to 2019, because 2020 is a pandemic year, so 2019 versus current. Exports, highest ever monthly exports in July. The purchasing managers index is up. July 21 was the first time when the PMI manufacturing recorded an increase in employment since the pandemic began. Firstly, are you actually seeing signs of a turnaround, which is something the government is using to claim that, look, the opposition is attacking us for mismanaging the economy, things aren't that bad?
Look, I think mismanagement is not in question. I think relative to anywhere in the world, or relative to any logic, or relative to how states have handled their responsibilities, it is not debatable that the union has mismanaged their role very badly.
How would you respond to these numbers?
So let's not debate what is not worth debating.
Okay.
Now you say,
Yeah.
is it truly turning around? I certainly hope so, right? I mean, I'm still a bit nervous because our numbers are better than we feared, but not as good as we expected. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
Certainly the interim budget estimates that the predecessor government had left of 30%, 35% increases and all look like kite flying. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt that they didn't know the second wave was coming. Whether that's a virtue or a flaw, you can decide for yourself, because they had zero allowances or plans for it. But yeah, I mean, if you say, are we as badly impacted today as we were 2-3 months ago, the answer is no. If you say, did the second wave, which in medical magnitude and infection magnitude was 6x or 8x the first wave,
Sure.
was that as big a strain on the economy as last year's, unannounced or 4-hour announced lockdown for months on end? Not anywhere close. The damage of last year was much, much, much worse.
Sure.
Because this year we never really went to that full. So even though the wave was 6x, the economic impact was much, much less.
Because there wasn't that kind of national lockdown. But would you start seeing these signs of whatever one wants to call it, incipient recovery, just simply by virtue of the fact that the impact, I mean, the lockdowns were not as severe and so on? Or would you give some credit to the center for this, saying, look, maybe there may be earlier mismanagement, but now they're doing a better job?
I don't have enough data to give credit.
Okay.
I hope the data will prove them right.
Right.
Even if the data turns out well, I'm not sure how much they can get credit for it, because they have to give us some concrete actions that they took where there was a cause and an effect.
Right.
We have two effects going on. One is the natural inclination of returning to normal from lockdown will improve things.
Right.
The second is what we call the low base effect. When you have had already a bad year, the number gets set down so that everything else gets up, and pent up or unused or demand will come into the market.
Yes.
So I am of the fear, let me put it clearly, I am of the fear that the economy has suffered structural damage. Not just because of COVID, but because of the slowing and the bad policies and the lack of the right corrective actions at the right time. So I am of the fear that the economy has suffered structural damage, and that it will take us a significant time to get back anywhere near the path we used to be. I may be wrong. I hope I'm wrong.
Yes,
I hope that they're brilliant.
Yeah.
But we were already, let's not forget, 7 or 8 quarters of steadily declining growth before we heard the word COVID.
Yeah. So there was a history there.
Yeah. So maybe I hope I'm being overly pessimistic. The precise answer to your question is, let's wait for a couple more months of data, and
before we can see.
Before we even say whether the shoots are permanent, the green shoots.
Right.
And then we'll talk about what are the causes that relate to that. Is it just the natural recovery from a dip, or has there been any actual policy action that created?
So we were talking about the sort of economic charter of trying to meet promises after coming to power. The other is the whole kind of, in a sense, the political charter, which is also to do with now reports that your government is planning to initiate cases against the leaders of the previous regime.
Listen, I don't think the government...
Is that something which could be seen as vendetta, or...
I don't think the government takes policy decisions. Even when they were not taking the complaints properly, it was not official government policy, right? For example, the main complainant in the case that you are talking about, this former Minister Velumani's raid yesterday, is not the government, is not the DMK, is an independent NGO. They are the original complainant to the DVAC, and they got the High Court of Madras to force the DVAC to register that case 2 years ago. And that case was, the previous government tried to, of course unofficially, will they ever say officially? Unofficially, they tried to have it quashed by having the DVAC SP file a report saying, I can't find anything. Isn't it shocking that the SP who couldn't find anything, now the new team goes and they find all kinds of evidence in 40, 30 companies.
So you're saying this is not a political settling of scores, because Mr. OPS and EPS have gone to Delhi to meet the leadership.
They can go to whoever.
Listen.
There has never been institutionalized corruption of the scale that happened between 2016 December after Ms. Jayalalitha died and 2021 February. It is beyond all realms of known corruption. It is running into tens of thousands of crores. There have been cases.
Is there evidence of that?
There have been cases filed in the DVAC with the High Court of Madras's stamp saying prima facie there is a case here investigated on the former Chief Minister Mr. EPS, the former Deputy Chief Minister Mr. OPS, the former Minister Mr. Velamani, the former Minister Mr. Tangamani, the former Minister Mr. Vijay Bhaskar, who was raided by the IT department and everybody else during the February 2017. So, I mean, listen, when you are in government, you maybe can control the speed or the movement of a case, at least in a state level. In the union level, they do many things. I don't want to get into that. But in this case, it is very hard to create. I mean, anybody who lives in Tamil Nadu will tell you there was egregious, rampant, outright corruption. As somebody pointed out yesterday, in this minister's case, it's one thing to have, that is a former ADMK MLA, Mr. Palanisamy of Karur, pointed out in TV interview yesterday. He said there are many levels of corruption. There's a corruption where you say, or you tell the guy, you win the tender, make sure you pay me for election funds someday. Then there's a nearby, you set up the tender where you say, hey, no, unless you pay me on. And he said, there's value money. This is the ADMK MP, former MPs. He says, there's value money type of corruption where the owner of the company is his brother, the supplier is his son, the giving is his department, and they inflate the price of light bulbs to 2x or 3x and take the government money so blatantly and pay it to themselves through their family members.
Okay. But
how can that not be investigated?
But the contention that corruption is not the monopoly of any one political party in Tamil Nadu, even previous DMK regimes
I don't disagree.
also were elected.
I never said
corruption.
I never said that it was, right? Did I say that it was a monopoly of one party?
Right.
I am just saying that till Ms. Jayalalitha was in control,
it was still like, not as much.
It was like a gang of thieves that were under some kind of head and control. Right? She herself is convicted, as you know. I'm sure you remember that. Once she disappeared, it became, as I've said, politically, and the consequences also for corruption, is a bunch of kind of headless tails and legs. Tamil, tala illa kalgal valgal. So they started running independent little fiefdoms. And it got out of control.
Let me ask you in conclusion, because there is a side to you which is quite outspoken, and I'm sure by now your colleagues and your leaders would have realized this, and especially on Twitter, where you see you getting into fights, including, by the way, with Jaggi Vasudev for various reasons. Has anyone ever said anything to you? In terms of, has said, listen.
No, listen.
I mean, now you're a minister. Maybe now.
Yeah. No, I think.
Take
listen,
it easy, or
yeah, I think there's there's multiple perspectives to this. I said somewhere, I think to the Times of India, when they said you're very combative, and I said all I said was the truth. So if you are used to somebody bending and scraping all the time, then a man standing upright looks combative to you, and that's the truth, right? I have not.
Combative is fine.
No. But I'm saying that's one way of looking at it. Another way of looking at it is, of course, I'm a minister.
Sure.
Of course, I have very important things to do.
Yes.
And the last thing I need to do is engage in unnecessary debate. And I'm learning. I'll give you an example. Yesterday, the actor Mr. Kamala Hassan has made some comment about the white paper I released. And somebody called me for a comment, and I said it's not worth it. I mean, like I'm talking about finance and fairly complicated public policy and stuff like that. Surely, an actor is not the one for whom I should be giving a kind of response. So I let it go. But some of the time, it's about the principles we stand for, right? Some of the time. For example, we come from the self-respect movement. You can see that I am a follower of Goddess Meenakshi, and I'm also of Periyar, who says as long as that God doesn't discriminate between people and doesn't require gifts as the basis for entry and all that, I have no. So why I'm saying that is part of Periyar's instruction to people who follow in the way of Periyar, the Dravidians, was that you must expose the fake Swamis and the charlatans. Because it is good for society.
You've been calling Jaggi Vasudev a commercial operator and a publicity hound, amongst other things.
Charlatan is the right word. A man who claims to do things or be things that he is not.
But now as minister, I mean.
No. Listen, I don't go out of the way. You ask me a question, my answer doesn't change if I'm a minister or if I'm not a minister.
Fair enough.
I don't go out of my way to tell you things. You ask me a question, I give you an answer.
Fair enough. But you didn't answer my other question. That has anyone taken you aside and said, listen, take it, or has that
many people? But listen, of course.
But I'm saying, I'm talking within the DMK. Has anyone
that and all I can't say, right? I mean, of course. Listen, I'm still in the job. I'm still doing the best work I know how to do.
Okay.
Of course, everything requires a balance. Of course, nobody wants to take on unnecessary conflict.
Sure.
Right? It's not my day job to. Somebody asked me a question. I said the evidence against Jaggi Vasudev, as is the evidence against Velmani, as is the evidence against 50 such people.
Right.
Black and white in the CAG reports, in the books of the government.
Okay.
The problem we have in our society, and Jaggi Vasudev is only the tip of the iceberg.
Sure.
Is that it is almost impossible to actually convict anybody of any wrongdoing or to get them to pay the consequence or give retribution or anything. On the other hand, we have just seen what they have learned to do in New Delhi, which is to use agencies as weapons irrespective of whether you're innocent.
Right.
They can't convict you because you've done nothing wrong.
Right.
But they can come after you and harass you and make your life difficult. You'll be the first example of that.
Right. Okay.
So,
all right. Well, let's see how it goes, Mr. Tyagarajan. We look forward to seeing your budget and how that plays out. But thank you so much for talking to us as candidly as always.
Anytime.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.